Hey up and welcome to another episode of Last Cast. Today you join us once again at Sunrise Lakes for another match scenario series. As you can see, the conditions today are vastly different from any other series we've done on here, and equally they're going to be very difficult. Last night you can see there's a sharp frost on the ground. It was -2. Temperatures the past couple of days have been around sort of 0, just there above. So conditions are going to be very hard. Equally, get all my excuses out of the way now. There's been a bit of snow melt going, and probably this lake might have been frozen recently as well, so the temperature of the water is going to be well down. There's a bit of colour in it, so it's going to be difficult today. So that in mind, as per usual, we're going to do the similar kind of setup to how we're going to fish it. 3 stints of 2 hours over the 6 hours, showing you different methods that I'd employ this time of year. The crux of it today is going to be fishing very negative, so it's not going to be loads of bites, lots of activity and lots of feeding, but we'll go into that when we start running through what we're going to do on the peg. But like I say, conditions are very difficult, so our target weight today is anywhere from 25, which is what we sort of decided to fish to, sort of 25 pounds, been getting somewhere in the matches lately. But we're speaking to the lake owner John today, just while he's pegging the match further up on match late today, and he said 30 pounds should be doable, but it's going to be a challenge, so we'll call it 30, but I'd be happy anywhere above 20-25 pounds, so we'll see how we go. Like I say, and that brings us on to the peg that we're fishing today. As you can see behind us, what I've done, purely because there's no peg numbers around here, I've decided to pick a peg of my choice. And what I've decided to do is pick a peg here with plenty of options for me to fish, purely because obviously we need to do 3 different methods, so it gives me the correct features to fish those methods too. In terms of what we've got here, we've got a nice depth of water out in front of us, probably 6 or 7 foot I think from memory, but equally we've got a nice feature there with the stick ups, plenty of reeds and cover, and in winter especially, fish will back off towards cover, especially where there's a bit of deep water in front of it as well, and that'll be a great area to fish, sort of fish bread basically. We'll be dobbing bread there. In terms of the next area of the peg, we've got a nice bit of open water chucking towards an island. Again, with it being really cold, there's probably shallow water, maybe 2.5, maybe 3 foot tops towards that island. What I want to be chucking is just at the bottom of the shelf off that in the deeper water. Again, a nice bit of open water, and generally in winter when it's very cold, fish tend to congregate in big areas of open water like we've got in front of us today. Rather than picking a peg with an island and sort of fishing really small pellets and stuff up to a little island, I want a bit of water so the fish can feel safe and they'll shoal up in those kind of areas. Finally, it's still going to be in open water, but on a shortish pole line. That's when I'm going to fish expanders. Again, in winter especially, you can catch quite a decent weight of skimmers when the carp aren't playing ball, so those are going to be my 3 sort of areas of the peg. I've got the stick ups there for dobbing bread. I've got a nice bit of open water where I think I'll probably fish bomb and corn for the 2nd hour, and then in the 3rd hour, when hopefully the fish will start feeding a little bit, I'll come short and fish something like expanders, maybe little nuggets of fish meal ground bait with dead maggots, but we'll see how the session goes. So that's going to be the structure of today's session. And hopefully, as I say, we'll get towards that 30 pound target. It's going to be difficult, but we'll see how it goes. So I'll get the gear set up, get a few rigs on, plumb up, and then we'll get the fishing started. Right, so we're now on the box, got all the gear set up around us, and I've got my bait prepared. So what we're going to do is fish bread for the first 2 hours. Now, as I say, we've got 3 methods that we're going to cover today, 2-hour stints, so 3 lots of them. Dobbing bread's going to be the first one, second's going to be bomb and con with a waggler, and third's going to be fishing expanders over micros. In terms of how I've decided to set it out in terms of stages, which I'm going to do first, you've got to think about leaving a bit of an area of your peg. In winter, when it's been this cold, you've got to think about leaving an area for the fish to congregate in, and usually when you've got open water, that's where you want to leave them. So as it stands today, with the peg being as it is, I've got a nice reed bed there, so I can start there and leave the big expanse of water behind me to fish bomb and corn, and then let the fish settle over there, and then hopefully when they start to move in later on and feed a bit, go on to the expander. So that's my plan of attack for the day. But dobbing bread's pretty simple. Like I say, we're going to do that for the first 2 hours and work along this reed bed behind us. Again, it's a similar kind of principle to what I was just explaining about leaving a bit of water there. In terms of how I want to fish each end of the reed bed and try and get the fish, because they'll spook obviously when you catch a few, sort of congregate in the middle in a nice dark patch of water where I can see the bites and try and sort of hem them into one area in that spot, and that's my plan of attack really. So I'm going to start at the extreme left. If I can't get any bites, go to the extreme right of my peg, then gradually work my way in to push them into the middle where hopefully we'll get a few. Dobbing, it's a very simple method. Basically, using a nice piece of bread, fishing it somewhere off the bottom. Say for example, in the depth of water we've got today, I'm going to start at 6 inches off the deck and then move my way up if I can't catch anything. It's basically a method where you're not feeding anything, you're just fishing a single sort of target hook bait, if you like, in this case a 7mm piece of bread. Occasionally you can use corn, things like that, but usually if you're allowed to use bread on a commercial, I'll stick with bread for this kind of fishing. In terms of the bait, Warburton's Toasty in the orange packet's perfect. Nice thick slice, nice and robust as well, so you get plenty of lift and drops of the bait, so it's not going to get smashed up by roach as easily as say some other brands that you might use. So that's my go-to bait wise. As I say, dead simple. The principle, like I say, is fishing the target bait off bottom, so that brings us on to the rig that we're going to use. Now, dobbing bread, you see a lot of people use different rigs for it, to be fair, and this is just the way that I like to do it. See, some people fish a bulk right by the hook length and just try and bomb the bait down to a certain depth. When it's as cold as it has been, the fishing's going to be hard today. My plan of attack is to fish right through the water with the bread, make it come across as natural as possible to the fish. So in terms of that, light lines, light hooks, and very light shotting down the rig. Again, I might have to step up as the course of the day goes on, just in case we start hooking a few better carp there, but we'll just have to see how the session goes. I'm just looking to get a few bites to give myself a gauge to start with, so nice and light. We'll start from the bottom and work up to the top. In terms of the hook, size 16, Drennan silverfish match, nice square bend hook and very light in the wire gauge. So key thing really with your hook choice for dobbing, nice wide gape, square bend, but especially a light pattern hook is what you're looking for. Something that's strong, in this case it's a forged hook as well, so it's nice and strong, but a light wire gauge. You want that bread to fall naturally. In terms of the line, I've tied that to that's 012 Drennan Suplex fluorocarbon. Again, fluorocarbon I use in winter all the way through. It's just something I've got confidence in. Still nice and light though, but still robust, about sort of 2 pound breaking strain's about right. And then the main line, again, I keep that nice and thin, 013 Guru N gauge, purely because I want the bread to act as naturally as possible, like I say. Shotting wise, I've got number 11 stots spaced out at sort of 10 inch intervals or 8 inch, something like that, all the way up the rig to the float. Dead simple, as I say, I'm laying this rig in along the reed bed and I want that piece of bread to fall dead naturally through the water, and I can read it then on the float as well. In terms of how I shot the float then, obviously there's not much shot down the line at all. I have the bulk right under the float. Float choice, wire stem, Garbolino, I think it's a DC 15 this one. Nice stable body. Again, if there's a bit of wind on it, but crucially, the key thing is a nice, short, but hollow, thick bristle. The light can be very bad when you're fishing in front of reed beds and stuff, so you need something that you can see. And equally, with a nice thick bristle, it'll dot down to sort of bottom of the bristle with the shot as they are there, and then I'll be able to read the bread on the bristle. The bread, because it's such a heavy bait when it's swollen up, will actually register on the bristle, so you can get away with fishing a much thicker bristle, because that'll register for you, so you don't need heavy shot down the line. In this case, I've got a nice short line above the float to the elastic, so double number 5 at the top. So again, solid elastics in winter because I think they just work better than hollows. Usual back shot beneath the float, but a short length of line purely because I've got a lot of depth there. If it was very shallow water, say 2-3 foot, then I'd have a long piece of line. But because it's such a depth of water, the fish won't be able to see the pole over their heads. So I'm happy to fish a short length line as I can get away with. I can really sort of poke the float then into the nooks and crannies around the reed bed. Again, that's another thing that it comes down to when you've got the bulk underneath the float, is by doing that you can push the float right into sort of little areas in the peg where you're not going to be able to sort of swing a bulk in and it can go wrong. Something like this, you're pushing your pole tip into the feature, the float and the bulk will follow, and then you can lay the shot out behind it nice and simply. So that's basically it. All I'm going to do, as I say, is work my way along the reed bed for the first couple of hours and see how we go. Just try and pick off the odd fish while the fishing's difficult. So we'll crack on with that now and see how well we start. Right, so we're ready to start now on the dobbing. I'm just going to take out a 7mm punch of this Warburton's Toasty Loaf. Again, I don't do anything to the bread other than compress it in the punch when I'm putting it on the hook. So I don't roll it or microwave it or anything like that. I find it's much better straight out of the bag. It swells up a lot quicker that way. As you can see, a perfect hook bait there. So we'll get this shipped out to the reed bed and see if we can get a bite or two. Like I said, plan is to start at the extreme left of the reed bed and then work my way to the right. So I'm just going to lay it in, then put the float in a patch where I can just about see it. And it's just a case of waiting and watching the float for an indication. And you can see nice thick bristle, so I can see it against that dappled water that I'm fishing in. I'll probably give it about 15-20 seconds, maybe a bit more, up to a minute at times, if I'm happy that there's going to be 1 or 2 fish there. But first I just want to lay the rig in and see if I can locate 1 or 2. That was a bite there. Just going to repeat the process. There's 1 or 2 fish there at least. Lay the rig in and get the float to settle. See how the float sits absolutely immediately there. Obviously with such light shot down the line and a very light bait like bread, before it swells up obviously, it's going to take a while for that float to settle, so make sure you keep an eye on the bristle all the time, because it'll tell you then at what depth roughly you're getting the bites at. Again, with it being so cold, I'd expect the fish to be much nearer the bottom rather than sort of mid-water. So that's probably reached depth about now, so I'm just going to leave it for sort of 15-20 seconds, then reset the float again. It's obviously got to be mindful when you're fishing up to reed beds like this that there's going to be about a bit of debris just off the reed bed, so you've got to come a bit further away than you might think. Right, so there's our first fish on the bread. Feels like a decent fish this, and that's right in the middle of the peg. Again, right in the bit of water that I've left for the best part of what must be about an hour or so now. Just having to take it careful. Really nice positive bite that. Feels like a good fish as well. Again, what I've done for the past hour, it's been quite difficult. I've dobbed around sort of the left and the extreme right of the peg and only had 1 proper indication. I've just dropped into a nice little bay in the reeds there, and it's gone straight away. Again, just having to take it really careful because we're only on a little size 16 hook. That looks like a nice carp, that. Again, really nice positive bite that, and hopefully if I drop back in there on the next couple of drops, I should get one again. And you can see they're not fighting this too hard this time of year with the water temperatures being down, so you can get away with much lighter gear. But also what I've done is come probably another 10 inches further off the deck to get this fish, just to avoid the stick-ups a little bit more. And steer him round here. And there we go, that's our first fish in the net. See, hooked right in the top lip. We'll see if we can hold him up for camera. And fish is absolutely freezing cold, but that's a good 2.5, 3 pound that. See if he'll behave for the camera. Cracking fish. As I say, we've had to wait a while for that bite, but we've finally got one. So we'll get him slipped in the keep net. See as well, there's been a few leeches on that fish as well, so it must be cold. They'll barely moved in the past few weeks, I'd have thought. So at least now I've identified an area where there might be 1 or 2 fish shoaled up, so hopefully I'll be able to go back in there and make the most of the rest sort of 40 minutes that we've got on the Dobbing of bread. So I'm happy with the depth. That's presented itself nicely, a nice positive bite. As I say, a lot of it when you're fishing up to those kind of reed beds is avoiding sort of the debris on the bottom. So it does pay to keep going up in depth by about 4 to 6 inches each time, and like I say, I've shallowed up probably twice over the course of the session so far. We've finally got one. Right, so after that first carp that we've had, as I say, that probably took an hour and 10 before we had that. We've got about another 40 minutes or so to try and get 1 or 2 more. So I'm going to start focusing my attention on that one area of the peg where we've had that indication. Again, hopefully there's 1 or 2 fish there, and if by using a soft elastic as well, with any luck they won't have bolted off when I've hooked that last one. So we'll see if we can get 1 or 2 more indications there. As I say, we're not fishing for hundreds of fish today, and it's often the case with dobbing that you might only catch 2 or 3, or you know, if you sat on a shoal of them, that's when you'll really start to put a weight together. But crucially, we've left all that area of our peg, all the open water for the fish to settle in, so with any luck, as I say, we should pick up the fish a bit later on in parts 2 and 3 where we're fishing like bomb and corn, then on the expander. Again, obviously the fishing will tend to get better as the day goes on as well, so although it's not hectic sport on the Dobbing, at least we've had 1 fish now and we're off the mark. One thing to note as well, what I'm going to do is spend a little bit more time on this in this area of the peg in terms of leaving the hook bait before moving it and resetting it, just to give the fish a bit of an extra chance to have a look at it. As I say, I'm not trying to cover as much water now because I've covered most of the reed bed in the past sort of hour and a half, well, hour and a quarter I should say. So I just want to focus in this one area now. And there's another one on now. Again, right tight against the reeds that time. Just taking my time with it again. Real light hook length. This feels like another quality fish. So right in the same spot. All I've done there is set the rig and then I've moved it back a bit closer to the reeds and one's come out and snatched at it. Really nice positive bites on bread as well when you're fishing like this. And feels like another good carp. Surprisingly as well, we've had hardly any indications off roach today as well. So being able to get away with a slightly smaller punch, again on venues where you've got a lot of F1s, it does tend to pay to fish a slightly smaller piece of punch if you can, like a 7mm. This fish seems to have woken up a bit now. Because it seems on this lake that there's still quite a few F1s in here, but it seems like there's more proper carp to be caught. And don't want to put too much pressure on the fish, being that we're only on a small size 16. Again, you've got to take that into account that you're fishing quite a light wire gauge hook for bread. So you can't go too mad putting the pressure on the fish. Like I say, that's taken all of about 5 minutes after that previous fish to get that bite. So it just goes to show how important location and depth is when it comes to dobbing. You can see as well, by fishing a 5/5 elastic like this rather than a hollow, when I do strike, the fish doesn't really bolt off as such. But I can ship the pole back, get the elastic to tighten up and bottom out a little bit quicker, and get the fish out into open water before they really know what's going on. It's putting up a good fight, this one. This looks like a slightly bigger carp. Again, when it's as cold as this and we've had such a hard frost last night as well, you don't need hundreds of fish to put a weight together. Again, that's why it's important that you make every fish count, especially when you're fishing light gear like this and just fishing for a few bites. So I don't want to try bullying this fish too much if I can. That's a really nice fish to catch, that one. Get another few pound in the net. Probably slightly bigger than the last, this one, but like a block of ice again. Again, nails right in the top of the lip, as you can see there. Perfect hook hold. There we go, there's even a few leeches on him as well. That's a lovely common carp. So again, if anything, just slightly bigger than the previous fish, but a quality fish nonetheless. Like I say, a few of these on Dobbing, we're off to a good start. So we'll get him popped in the net and just repeat that process and see if there's another one to be caught. I wouldn't expect to catch sort of 10 or 15 out of that area of the peg, but 2 or 3 is really good going for this time of year. Right, so another piece of bread on the hook again, and like I say, I'm going to go straight back to that exact same spot. One thing that I've identified though, most certainly, is the fact that the fish are right into the reeds. I don't think I can get away with being too far away from them, to be fair. Every time I've moved that float into the reeds, so it's only been twice and I've had a fish both times in that area of the peg.
especially because we're fishing into a bay as well. That's something to point out, is that I'm not laying the rig sideways and I'm letting the bread swing in from sort of the pole side of the rig. So it's arcing towards the reed bed that way, rather than risking getting caught on any debris by laying it across. Like I was saying, by having that bulk right under the float as well, it means that I can push that float right in and amongst the reed bed. As I've mentioned though, I wouldn't expect to catch loads of fish from this one area of the peg with the stamper fish that they are. Be very surprised if they're there in large numbers. So what I might have to do is fish ever slightly left and right of that same spot just to see if there's one or two to pick off there. But hopefully there's a few in that area that I can catch. Like I say, try and get towards that £30 target for today. Right, there's another one on now. Again, just push that float right up up to the reed bed, and it's just dipped under there. Again, just taking it really carefully. Hopefully he's out from the snags. Feels like another quality fish, this. Again, it's amazing just how close I'm having to get the float to the reed bed to get a bite, but as soon as it gets there, there's a fish underneath it. Again, it could be a mistake on my part for the first sort of hour and 10, hour and a quarter, not going close enough to the reeds. Another quality carp, this one, it looks like. Not as big as the last two though, but another nice fish. Again, only a pound or so this one, but again, just goes to show how close you've got to go to the reed sometimes. Again, another leech in this one's mouth, so I'll save him the trouble of that. And hooked right in the top lip like that, like so. Again, perfect hook hold. Another nice fish in the net. And it does seem that's where the fish want to be, is right in that little bay there. Whether it's because I've dobbed around the rest of the reed bed and forced them into that corner, I'm not sure whether they were originally, but by leaving it and then just going in on it like that, I managed to catch 3 in the same spot. So just adjust the shot in and then we'll get back out there and hopefully catch another one before we come to the end of this 2-hour stint on the Dobbing. Right, so I'm going to slip another piece of punch on. That's the 3rd fish now on the Dobbing method. As I say, it's not been as prolific as I'd have liked, but it's a decent start, and we're starting to get towards that £30 target. We've probably got somewhere in the order of £8 to £9 in the net, maybe a bit less. Unfortunately, we've only had 1 roach on the Dobbing as well, so it shows that they're not really feeding too much. So it gives me an idea when we come to fish micros and expanders, with any luck, we shouldn't be too troubled by the roach, and we should get into a few carp and skimmers on that. But again, that's going to have to wait till part 3 of this little series. So I'm just going to do exactly the same again. So it's really difficult to get that float right into the reed bed and get the hook bait presented cleanly, but it's what we're having to do to try and get bites. And that looks like it's stuck on something. But as I've said before, this is the crux of having the rig set up like that, with the bulk right under the float. I can get the float right tight against the reeds and let the bread swing underneath it. Whereas if I had a bulk, I'd have to try and swing the bulk into the reed bed, and that often results in getting tangled with the feature. So like I say, the next method that we're going to go on to after this is a very similar principle to what we've been doing with the bread, just fishing sort of single hook baits, maybe flicking a few grains of corn over the top, this time in open water with a bomb and a waggler over the top, just in case we start getting a few more bites. So it might be something that we have to change if the fish really don't seem to respond to it. Might have to tweak it a little bit, use maggots, maybe even put on a very small sort of banjo type feeder just to try and get a few fish in the peg. As I say, that's going to have to wait for the next section of this match scenario. Not been a bad 2 hours to start with. Ideally I'd have liked a few more fish, but at least with the fish that we've caught, they've been of a decent stamp, so we've started off quite well, to be fair. Again, after an hour and a quarter, it was looking like we weren't going to get any indications at all, but by sort of persevering, changing the depths and really trying to get as close to the feature as possible, managed to sneak 2 or 3 fish. There's another fish on now. Same again, just by twitching that bait around that bit of reed, and it's gone again. Amazing, just by moving the bait sort of 2 inches nearer to a little reed or something, the float's just buried. Again, feels like another quality fish. So I think we'll probably have to call this the last one on the Dobbing. As I say, it's all seemed to have happened in sort of 20-25 minutes. It's when all the fish have come, but the crux of it is now, if I come back to this peg, I know that if I do have to fish with the Dobbing method again, fishing bread, you have to fish really tight to the features, otherwise you just don't seem to get the bites. And equally, what's something to note, like I say, is choice of elastic. When I'm fishing tight to reeds like that, all 4 fish that I've hooked, I've managed to get away from the reed bed, even though I'm fishing very light, as you can see. I think a lot of it's down to fishing such a light elastic that fish don't really know that they're hooked initially. But with a doubled up solid, as soon as you start to ship back, it will pull the fish and get them to turn before they really know what's happened. Another nice little carp. Again, not a massive fish, but we're well on our way to that target weight now. So nailed right in the top lip again. So we'll get this rig popped to one side, show the fish to camera, and then we'll look at switching on to our second method of the day. So a nice little carp, about £1.5 pounds, something like that. As you can see, cracking little fish to catch, mint condition. So we'll get him slipped in the keep net and see if we can catch a few on the bomb and corn and the waggler next. Right, so like I say, that brings us to the end of the first 2 hour stint of this match scenario series. We've only had 4 fish, but they've been of a decent stamp, and like I say, got us off to a good start. The crux of Dobbing, hopefully I've run through in about as comprehensive as I can. It's a simple method really in terms of the rigs and the bait that you're using. There's a couple of little alterations that you can make through the day, and the crux of it is really finding the fish. And the 2 ways to do that are going as close to the feature as you can and then finding the correct depth to catch them at eventually. So it's taken about an hour or so for us to do that today. But once we found that depth, we've gone into the same spot 4 times and picked off 4 fish. So it's one of those things that the sooner you can find out where the fish are and the depth that you need to be fishing with the bait, you can really put a weight together. It's taken us a bit of time today, but at least we're off to a good start. And like I say, keep your eyes peeled for part 2, where we'll be fishing the bomb and corn, be coming out soon, and hopefully we'll catch a few fish on that and get our way towards that £30 limit. So as I say from last cast, thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you on that next one.